about that. This is a very important thing because it's a very pure emotion and it can teach you about the cause of it all, the cause of any beautiful thing in nature, you see. There was a man, a saint, who lived close to a waterfall to where the Ganges comes out from the mountains. And all he did was to go and look at this waterfall all day and said, "Oh, goodness me, how marvelous. Well done, God." And get back to his house. He never did any discipline or anything. But he got what it takes.
The question basically, how do you do it? And you've been talking around it. Perhaps partially describe it, because then it would lead you on the wrong trail. But by just talking about it and around it, you're doing the same thing in another manner. And I'd like to know, I presume that you'd like to know, how do you meditate on your travels through India and elsewhere? What have you found out about how other people do it? And I'd also like to know, how do you know? How do you know what you're telling us?
Could you?
It's the idea is that
I just had to repeat, says to give me time to dive for the question, for the answer.
he said the way that you've been answering the questions, you're sort of talking around things, and then you said that you can't really describe it. You don't want to describe it because it would be, for each individual different. But he really wants to know, how do you meditate? And what have you seen in India in the way other people have meditated? Is that close enough?
Near enough to what you meant. I'm not very showy as a meditator. I'm not awfully good at it. But it has changed my whole life. That's all I can say about it. Ask my wife, am I nicer to live with? As regards what other people get from it on a higher level, I go by the man who guides our meditation. And undoubtedly, he is very unlike anybody I ever met otherwise. And in this peace he carries with him is shown, first of all, by his movements, which are always balanced and graceful. Also by his quiet way of dealing with situations absolutely appropriately, and by his very good sense of humor and quickness at picking up the point of anybody's question. And finally, by a kind of all-pervading love for humanity, which he exudes. And I met many people on the way to that in India, and I've met many people in the West on the way to that. I don't know that it's profitable to say anymore than just that whatever anybody wants, that meditation can give them. Because it's a release of this sattva as stored inside one, of which we got quite enough to begin. So whatever you want, if you meditate, it will put you on the way to getting it. And all we can do is to give it you right then, and you use it how you like. You want me to give up. You do. All right. Just before I leave that subject to your question. Before I came here, I asked various people in the different groups in different countries to tell me what I ought to say in New York. And a lot of valuable things came, and as we had the leader of our English-speaking Mexican group here, Mexico City, I rather want to read out what you gave me from them. It's quite true that some of your group, mostly businessmen, replied in terms that showed that they were thinking about how to sell meditation. But that's not what I want to do at all. However, the others had useful things to say, unsolicited, well, solicited testimonial. They advised me, one, to stress that meditation gives you energy, so that you are more easily able to get what you want and are not so forgetting. Two, meditation gives you repose, gives you rest and peace, serenity. Three, meditation helps you to break old habits and make room for something new. Now, I want to come back to that in a moment. Four, and very important, meditation helps you to live in the moment, in the now, because only in this moment can I be aware of my divine self. And I can only be in this moment by shedding all worry about the past and the future. A past that's over and done with, and a future that will be totally unlike what one is imagining. Helps you to live in the moment, and so you see the opportunity that lies at your feet. Five, an idea that meant a great deal to us in Mexico, the two hemispheres of the mind, one noisy, the other silent. Well, there you are. And that's it. Oh, yeah. They say, tell the story of the man with the little lantern. So, all right, I will. I must tell it in the actual words as it was given. To show that we ought to start just from where we are. A certain man had to go out walking to another town 10 miles away. It was night and pitch dark, and all he had was a tiny little lantern, which could at most light a couple of steps. Because the journey seemed so long and the night dark, he was depressed and unsure of reaching his destination with only this tiny light. While he stood at his door, in utter frustration and helplessness, a meditation expert, a realized man, happened to appear there and asked him why he was standing at his door with a lantern. The man replied that he really didn't know what to do. Though he was all set for the journey, it appeared so long and the night so dark that his small lantern couldn't really be of much use. The meditation expert explained to him that it was not necessary to have a light big enough to illumine the whole way. As you proceed, he said, your little lantern, the light from that will move with you. So that the next 1 or 2 steps will always be clear. All you need to do is to hold on to this light and start walking. As the darkness clears with the rising of the sun, you keep on walking, you put your lantern out, and you reach your destination in the full light of noon. And that is, you go through Samadhi and Turiya, which is full illumination. The same applies to one's little effort. After hearing the words, however small the efforts one can make, the light will be enough to take us slowly and steadily to the goal to be achieved. And then there'll be nothing else to do except to enjoy the bliss of union. That's what they wanted.
I think it's a common human frailty to sort of look for a purpose in one's life, a goal. You know? Now, when one postulates something like this, one will often get lost because one begins to think in terms of, well, what is one's goal? Where is one supposed to go? You know, in what direction should one travel? And when you begin thinking like this, that goal, of course, is way beyond the circle of life we're talking about. See, it's outside the circle of life. You know? So that perhaps this kind of goal, which is really intellectual, you know, is a false thing, and one cannot arrive at the purpose of one's existence by postulating anything intellectual. But one must still proceed by this small lantern light and forget whatever one's mind says about it.
Could you repeat some of that into the microphone, because the microphone wants to hear it?
Well, I don't know if I quite got that, but he says it's a human frailty to look for a goal in life. And I got from him that that was sort of an intellectual goal that he was talking about. And that
Well, the why of one's existence.
the why of
Yes.
existence.
Yeah, right. I'm not interested in it myself. And there's too much futile search of that sort going on now. It isn't that sort of goal that I believe you and I want. But there is a goal, and each person has one thing chiefly which could make life worthwhile for him. And that's the only goal that's valid for you or for me. I can deal with the proper use of the intellect in the second lecture. Right now we're talking about the way into one's divine self, the light that lights everything you do. How to get better relationships with that. And that's the only goal I'm talking about. And one had better not have too much of that. One just takes this little lantern and makes this journey into the darkness of the interior and see what happens. Now, to come back, if I may, to this Mexican statement that it helps you, meditation helps you to break old habits and so make room for something new. Now, you know, one of the chief obstacles is that we're such creatures of habit I don't mean just the physical habits, for life in New York demands one kind of physical habit and life in London another kind. And that's not important. But it's the habits of mind and outlook that I refer to. And just before I came, I got a clipping given me by a Welsh headmaster at the local school who'd been back to Cardiff for Easter. And he got this clipping out of the Cardiff Sunday paper. It said, years ago, when they set the lions free to roam at Whipsnade Zoo, open zoo, it is said that for long afterwards, the lions continued to pace up and down where once the bars had been. Now, says the writer, I hear that in Cardiff, where they have turned the city centre into a traffic-free shopping precinct, the citizens still religiously cross the road only where the pedestrian crossings used to be. Strange creatures, lions, splendid people, the Welsh. And, you know, we are rather absurd, quite frankly, all of us. It's the habits on our subtle level which really cripple us. And that is why work in a group is so valuable, because you see in their presence people you're fond of and you see how much of a creature of habit you yourself are. It's very difficult to do alone. I'm dodging about quite a lot because I don't want any conceptualizing, which is a habit of today. You've only got to have somebody produce a bright idea, then somebody goes and conceptualizes and forms a theory about it, and then people go on discussing that theory, and then someone comes up with an opposing theory, and all the brightness has gone out of the original idea.
One fear that has been expressed often is the fear of meditating becoming habitual. Could you speak to that? Some people have expressed that to me.
The fear of what becoming habitual?
Meditating becoming habitual.
Oh, I don't think there's any risk. But, but I do think there are two things that could be said about that. One is instructions about our system of meditation include the fact that you should never meditate more than half an hour at a time. Half an hour is the full limit that any ordinary citizen can keep his attention. So, going on and neglecting your job, or if you're a woman, your household duties or whatever, is not going to help. See? And there are a lot of comic cartoons about on that subject, aren't there? The other thing that can be said about it is that each meditation period must be taken entirely afresh, forgetting all other meditations of the past and coming at it with the idea that this half hour now belongs to your divine self. And it's his meditation and not yours. And that what you're doing is following your little light into his antechamber. It's coming with love in your heart for your own true self. And then it will never become mechanical, just a repeat duty twice a day. And we have to help each other because, as you say, there is a tendency left to ourselves that things are just done in a habitual kind of way. That, in that sense, it could be called habitual, like washing twice a day, doing a half hour twice a day. Is that what you meant?
Yes, I think that would answer that question.
Isn't the habitual meditation, if it comes about that way, isn't that imitation rather than meditation?
Imitation. Yes, you're quite right.
It's just false.
Yes, it's false. I suppose about 9% of my own meditation is false, but it's worth going on for the one where, you know, even if one gets 2 minutes of sheer concentration of this new kind of energy and realization, it sets you up for a day or two to come. Even in the course of half an hour, to get 2 minutes, the full thing, it sets you up for a whole day. I want to mention, I'm so sorry, about the three worlds, that one of our troubles is that the units of space and time in the physical world are so long, so big. On the subtle world, everything happens instantaneously. Thoughts follow thoughts that can go all around the world in a minute. Everything is very quick. All barriers of space vanish in thought. You can't weigh and measure a thought. On the causal level, there is no time at all. Everything exists always and in potential, like a seed bed waiting for the seeds to come up. So, a thing which looks far off, like self-realization on the physical level, is not so at all. It can happen quite unexpectedly in a minute. The thing is to have it happen often and have it last longer. Sorry, somebody was saying correct.
I was thinking,
Were you thinking? You weren't thinking.
when one is, the rockets is taking over, you know, and one is suddenly stops to review one's position, and one gets a feeling of loss, you know, of purposelessness, of emptiness, and then.
Can I take it that far?
No.
No.
And then, and then one feels almost immediately a longing for something, you know. Now, is this feeling of longing is what you're calling love?
If I've heard you right, it's this longing. However we think about it, it's a longing for oneself. Like the game of hide and seek, where you're looking for treasure hunt, and whatever label you put on it, the longing one has, the nostalgia, is for this self which is missing.
Is that what you mean by love?
Yeah, yeah,
Feeling a real need for that.
yes. But then, when you get a comeback, then it ceases to be longing so much as love. Mutual.
Well, you see, I had understood at one point, one kind of meditation, one was supposed to feel love, you know? And in going into a meditation, I was trying to create a feeling of love, you know? But it's no good, you know?
No, I quite agree.
It's no good. It's got to come from that real.
I quite agree. But you're going to be able to find your own answer if you want to this problem. But I feel you're on the right line. Now, I want to stress this difference of time in the subtle world. We all get a taste of that in dreams, because while the quiet hemisphere is suppressed during the day and has to grumble away to itself, at night, when the other one goes to sleep, it's really out on the razzle. And it spends its time delighting in making dream dramas. And the dream dramas are composed of the experiences of the day before and even way back into the past. And they happen with great rapidity, and it's always changing. And there's one thing about them, that they always contain the complementary color, the opposite of what you know during the day. If you're poor, at night you dream you're rich. Everything happens either from some unfulfilled desire or from some dreaded fear. When I've been living rather bad, I always dream I'm lost at a railway station, and my luggage is on one train and one shoe is on the other train, and I've forgotten where I'm going, and so on. And that's a sign that my mind has been thinking too much the day before, and it's something I dread. For now, the first man that I know of took an interest in observing his dreams was a half-mythical king called King Janaka, who appears in several of the Upanishads, some of the earliest writings known. And this particular dream has been explained to us because it contains all the answers. This King Janaka was a king and therefore had a very big and busy daily life, but he was also well on the way up the ladder of self-realization, a realized man. One day, while sitting on his throne, he fell asleep and had a dream. He dreamt that he was attacked and lost his throne, and then wandered around penniless and persecuted by everyone. He eventually took to the forest, starving. He managed to gather enough fruit and vegetables to make a meal. But just as he had prepared it, 2 bulls appeared and trampled it all in passing. At this, the king began to weep and woke up to find real tears pouring down his shoulder and wetting his face. At that, he called together all the wise men, the pundits, and asked them to answer this question: which was real, the dream which produced real tears, or his seat on the throne? Tricky question. He said he would handsomely reward anyone who could answer, but would severely punish anyone if his answer proved false. Various people tried to answer, but the answer was incomplete and they got punished. There was there a man, a cripple, called Ashtabakra, which means literally bent in 8 places. This man came to answer the question and started to climb the stairs to the throne. Because of his disability, he fell halfway. And so the courtiers all laughed at him. But he also started to laugh, which greatly surprised them. So they asked, "Why are you laughing?" And he said, "You laughed first, so you tell me." They replied that they laughed because so many wise men had tried to answer the question and failed, but he couldn't even get up the steps and had the impertinence to think he could answer. Then he said, "Well, now, I laughed because you take all this for real. It's only a play, all this a drama. The only reality is the self." So the answer to the king's question is this, that neither the dream, nor the so-called real tears, nor the throne were real. And the only real thing is the king himself, who experienced both the dream and the throne. And if we, you and I, can only realize that the only permanent reality is the self that sees everything, that is always present in daytime, dream state, and deep sleep, then we will distinguish what is real from the ever-changing world around us. And even though you may not believe it to be true, a very good way to think of life, our lives, and people around us, is to regard it all as part of a very big drama, in which you are playing a small role, a small part, and you want to play that part as well as you possibly can, and get as much enjoyment out of it, and make some contribution to the big drama of creation. We've been going on rather long time.
How would you describe the way in which meditation can help one in dealing with personal ambition? How would you describe the way meditation can help one in personal ambition? In dealing with personal ambition?
Well, dealing with it or getting it.
Well, I mean the kind of ambition that would come more from the Rajas, the kind of ambition that comes more from the Rajas, the kind of pressure ambition.
Well, as I say, whatever your ambition, that meditation will help you to get. It may be a very faithful ambition.
I mean materialistic types of ambition. Materialistic types of ambition.
Yes, but it would help you if you wanted that. It really would. It might help you make more money. If you really want to learn enough and meditate well enough. But I think in time you would find that you would see through the apparent virtues and value of this particular way of the ambition. You'd realize that the benefits wouldn't last. Rich people are always full of worries. I'll tell you a story at the next lecture about that. The thing is to try and decide what you really want, so what's most worth getting, and connect that up with meditation. And lots of other bonuses come along too, unexpectedly.
One question that people ask me who read your earlier lectures, and which has not been answered by this lecture, is who this man is. It was simply a question of, wasn't it important that we know who he is? The teacher.
Oh, the teacher.
Who this man you have studied with is in India.
We usually reserve many descriptions which are possible until after you began to meditate. It's rather takes a little time. It's not a secret at all. It's 25 centuries ago, a great saint in India, Sri Shankara, discovered how wrongly the meditation was being done at that time. And it was being done in such a way that it was quite incomplete. It took you to a fine place, but no further. And so the people who practiced this and taught that everything is void. All life came from nothing. And this produced absolute chaos in India. And this man, Sri Shankara, put that right. He got people to meditate properly. He went all over India. He united the good ones again. He established 4 seats of learning, north, south, east, and west, which exist today. And a successor has to be a worthy one, or the seat is not occupied. And we are interested in the Shankaracharya of the Northern Division, whose seat is up in Joshima in the Himalayas, in the shadow of Mount Devi, in the snowy part of the Himalayas. And before his predecessor, that seat had been vacant for a very long time. But they went and found a very vital, wonderful teacher known everywhere in India as Guru Deva, and practically forced him, as an oldish man, to come and occupy this seat. And he was the one who appointed our teacher as his successor. He was the one who devised, chiefly with other heads of things, this system of meditation for use in the busy life of the West. And he was the one who the Maharishi says sent him out on his world tour. Maharishi belonged to the same system, the same tradition. And I've only heard about Gurudeva at second hand, both from the Maharishi and from our present teacher, the Shankaracharya, the head of the tradition. That's really a brief statement. I thought it was in that book, but I wasn't going to have to repeat it. So now, if you want, we recommend that you begin by being given meditation, just as you are, without one plea, so to speak. You will find outside two very beautiful ladies with paper, and you write your name down, your phone number, and state your wants. And by wants, I mean, do you want to just meditate, or do you want also to hear some more of the kind of teaching I've been giving you from this man in India as well? State your wants. Because everything that we've got from 10 journeys out there has been recorded, carefully translated, our questions translated into Hindi, the answers translated carefully back into English, the English recorded, and there'd never be such an opportunity again of finding a lot of the hidden knowledge of the East explained in a way that prevents misunderstanding. You put one of those two things. And one last question, if anyone wants to ask, because I have a feeling that the time is gone.
Is the technique, the meditation technique is taught by the same as that
Is the technique the same as Maharishi offers in TM?
Essentially, it's from the same tradition, but it's given in a very different way. It's without an entirely individual affair. There's no glamour about it, and there's no mass meditation. It's very instructed that it's different for each person, and a very private matter. It's given privately, it's carried on privately, it's one's own love affair with one's creator. And that does make a lot of difference, but I have no quarrel with the Maharishi at all, because I'm eternally grateful to him for introducing me to the head of this tradition. It was the first time I went to with the Maharishi to the ashram where the Ganges comes out to the mountains, Rishikesh. But I met this Shankaracharya, and I saw at once that he was what Mr. Uspensky had described to me. So, and showed me, a man who remembered himself. It was as if he was guarding a candle, and the people were applauding, enormous bands and everything, and they were putting garlands around his neck and kissing his toes, kissing his hands and all that. And he was quietly through it, as if guarding his little life. And then when we were sitting down, about 70 Europeans and a very Indian, on the shore of the Ganges, to my astonishment, I heard him saying what I'd never known anybody else in the world say except to Spencer. Our whole trouble is that we do not remember ourselves. So what's happened is that there's been a perfect conjunction between the teachings of Spencer before and the teachings since that of this expert with the meditation. We would never have understood anything but for the teaching of Mr. Spencer. And it's what Mr. Spencer himself said before he died. I never discovered the method. And he showed me what he meant enough so that I recognized it. He was describing a method of meditation. But he'd been all through India, and he'd never found it. And he said, you must find it, and if you meet the man with the method, you'll meet a really conscious man who'll be. And all that came true. But now, it really is time to stop. And how do I know it? I know it because at a certain point of the lecture, a story told me by my American mother always comes into my mind. I think she told it for that very purpose. There was a parrot tied to its perch. And in the same yard, there was a big and fierce dog chained to his kennel. And the parrot's chief occupation and chief form of joy was teasing this dog. Wouldn't you like to get me a good ugly face? Your mind's as bad as your face, God help you. And one day, the dog broke his chain, goaded to madness. And as the parrot was disappearing, tail almost down his throat, it was heard to say, I talk too damn much.